Bella always sat at the foot of my bed. Every night, like clockwork, just as I dimmed the bedside lamp and pulled the covers up to my chin, she'd settle in. Her golden fur glowed faintly in the soft light. Her eyes locked on me, not in a sleepy, relaxed way, but alert, watchful. It used to comfort me. Now, I wasn't so sure. Mark used to joke about it. "She's guarding you from dreamland assassins," he'd laugh, walking out of the room already checking his phone. But there was something solemn in Bella's stare, something too knowing. We'd been married 8 years, long enough to forget the names of our honeymoon restaurants, but not long enough to forget the taste of cold silence. Mark wasn't always distant. I remember how his eyes used to light up when I entered the room, how he'd reach for my hand even mid-conversation. But lately, there was a heaviness between us, an invisible wall I kept pretending didn't exist. He came home later than usual. Said work was intense. Deadlines, new hires, late meetings. He always looked tired, smelled different, and showered before bed, no matter the hour. I chalked it up to burnout. Everyone burns out, but Bella knew better. Dogs always do. She started, following him around the house, not in her usual tail-wagging way, but slow, silent, eyes narrowed. Sometimes she would sit by the staircase as he headed to his office, just watching, unmoving, a statue made of fur and instinct. Mark noticed. "Your dog's acting weird lately," he said once, not looking up from his phone. "She's protective," I murmured. "Of what?" he muttered, then walked away. That was the first night I couldn't sleep. I turned to Jenna, my best friend, over coffee one morning. Her eyes squinted as I described Bella's behavior. "Dogs pick up on things," she said slowly. "Maybe you should listen." "Listen to what?" I forced a laugh. "She's a dog, not a therapist." "Exactly," Jenna replied, sipping her latte. "She doesn't lie." The next night, Mark came home well past midnight. I pretended to be asleep, but Bella didn't. She sat rigid beside me, ears perked, body tense. When he entered the bedroom, she let out a low growl. Not loud, but unmistakable. Mark stopped in the doorway. "What's her problem?" I shrugged, heart pounding under the blankets. "She's tired, maybe." He climbed into bed without a word, turned his back to me, and pulled the covers tight around his shoulders. Bella didn't lie down. She stayed upright, head tilted slightly, her body still between us. Her breathing was shallow, steady. I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to Mark's soft snores and Bella's unmoving form beside me. The distance between Mark and me had started as a thread. Subtle, harmless, a missed text, a skipped dinner, a vague excuse. But lately, it had thickened into a rope, dragging the warmth from our home, knotting up everything soft between us. 2 nights later, I found Mark's phone on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower. My fingers hovered over it, locked. Of course. It hadn't been once. A year ago, he'd leave it on the table, open, boring, but now it was a vault, untouchable. Bella whined softly from behind me. I turned to find her sitting at the entrance of the kitchen, eyes fixed on the phone, then on me. I whispered, "What are you trying to tell me?" That night, as I lay in bed, Bella sat closer than usual, her body pressed against mine. When Mark finally came to bed, she didn't growl this time. She simply stood and walked to the door, scratched it gently, then sat, facing it, back turned, to us. It was a quiet rebellion, and it sent a chill through me. Something was wrong, not just drifting apart wrong, not life is busy wrong. Wrong like rotten wood beneath fresh paint, wrong like perfume on a shirt. that isn't yours. Bella had been watching me every night, not out of habit, but purpose. And tonight, for the first time, I wondered if she had seen something I hadn't. 3 nights later, Bella scratched the office door. It was 2:17 a.m. The hallway was dark, except for the low amber light from the night lamp in the corner. I had woken with a start, not from a dream, but from a sound I couldn't place at first. Then I saw her, standing still, head turned toward me, as if waiting. She scratched again. Mark had left his laptop on the desk. That never happened. I hesitated, still in my robe, still fogged from half sleep and full anxiety. Bella's gaze never wavered. It wasn't pleading. It was expectant, like she'd brought me here for a reason. I opened the door and stepped inside. The screen blinked to life. His email was still open. I wish I could say I paused, that I wrestled with the morality of snooping. But the truth is, my hands moved before I could think. His inbox was littered with subject lines that meant nothing, until one name repeated, itself too often to ignore. Riley. At first glance, it looked professional. She worked with him. I already knew that. But buried between the lines of office lingo were phrases that rang louder than a shout. Last night was incredible. I miss the way you look at me when you're not pretending. She doesn't see you. Not like I do. My throat closed. My fingertips went numb. Bella lay at my feet, eyes open. I clicked deeper. Pictures. Not graphic, but intimate. A shared hotel room. His hand brushing her cheek. Her curled into his chest. Mark's smile, one I hadn't seen in months, beaming, like it used to beam only for me. There was nothing ambiguous. This wasn't emotional closeness, mistaken for something more. This was betrayal, deliberate and cultivated, wrapped in soft words and hidden in plain sight. I shut the laptop slowly, as if slamming it might wake a sleeping version of myself I could never be again. Bella nudged my hand with her nose. I collapsed into the office chair. Not to cry, not yet. That would come later. For now, I simply stared ahead, as if my gaze could bore through the desk and into a version of my life where this wasn't real. I remembered the dinner I cooked last month, the one Mark barely touched. I remembered the perfume I couldn't identify on his shirt, the locked phone, the nights he claimed to work late. Every one of them rushed back like pieces of a puzzle I didn't know I had been solving. Mark had cheated, was cheating. Riley wasn't just a name. She was a fracture in the foundation I thought I'd built strong. I didn't sleep. When Mark came downstairs that morning, coffee in hand, tie already knotted, he glanced at me sitting in silence at the table. "You're up early," he said. "So, are you?" He didn't notice the shift in my voice. Or maybe he did and pretended not to. I followed him with my eyes. I looked for guilt, for panic, for some visible trace of remorse on his face. But he was composed, too composed. It wasn't a mistake for him. It was a decision. That hurt more. Later that day, I called Jenna. I told her everything, every line, every message, every flicker of truth I'd seen on that screen. She was quiet for a long time before she spoke. "You have to confront him," she said finally. "You can't live under this weight." But I didn't want a confrontation. I wanted a confession. That night, Mark came home late again. Bella met him at the door with stiff legs and a steady glare. He tried to pat her head. She stepped back. I sat on the couch, laptop open, the email displayed like a wound. When he saw it, he stopped mid-step. I didn't speak. I waited. He closed his eyes, exhaled through his nose, and sat opposite me. "You went through my stuff," he said quietly. "That's what you're opening with," I replied. "Not even a lie first." His mouth twitched, unsure if it should smile, frown, or say something clever. "She doesn't mean anything," he said finally. "It just happened." "No, Mark," I whispered. "You made it happen." His eyes dropped. "I was lonely. You were always tired, distracted, working or with Bella. Or, don't you dare blame the dog," I snapped. "She's the only one who's been honest." Mark stood, frustrated now, defensive. "Are you really going to throw everything away over one mistake?" Bella stood too. She didn't growl this time. She stood between us, eyes on him, still, focused, like she knew he was something to guard against. And that was all I needed.
The house had grown quiet in the days that followed. Not peaceful. Hollow. Mark was gone. He'd packed a single duffel bag and left without much ceremony. No dramatic exit, no tears, just silence, thick and unmoving, like fog in a closed room. Didn't cry. Not yet. The betrayal sat too high in my throat for sorrow to pass. Bella stayed close. Closer than before, as if she feared I might fall apart without her pressed against my side. She hadn't touched her toys. Her tail hadn't wagged in days. It was like we were both waiting, though I wasn't sure for what. Then I remembered the camera. It wasn't hidden. Not really. Just forgotten. Mark had installed it in the guest room months ago after a break-in on our street. He said he wanted an extra set of eyes while we were away. I hadn't thought about it since, but Riley's name in the emails replayed in my head, especially the one that mentioned your house, your bed. I opened the footage the next morning, dreading what I might find. The files were labeled by date. Most showed nothing but empty. Rooms and occasional glimpses of Bella padding through the hall. I clicked through them slowly, mechanically, until I hit a folder from 3 weeks ago. The timestamp read, Saturday, 10:48 p.m. I'd been away that night, visiting my sister out of town. I'd asked Mark to feed Bella and lock up. He said he spent the night working. The footage told a different story. I watched in muted horror as Riley entered the guest room with Mark. Her laugh echoed even though the audio was off. She didn't tiptoe or sneak. She moved like she belonged. Bella appeared seconds later. She stood in the hallway, then entered the frame slowly, ears back, head low. She positioned herself between the door and the bed. Her body blocked Riley's approach, tail stiff, muscles coiled. She didn't bark. She just stood there, immovable. Riley laughed again, clearly annoyed. Mark bent down, said something to Bella, but she wouldn't move. Riley reached to push her away. That's when Bella growled. It wasn't vicious. It wasn't even loud, but it was unmistakable. A low, reverberating sound of protest, of warning. Mark grabbed Bella by the collar and dragged her out of the room. The footage ended there. I sat frozen, hands trembling over the mousepad. She had tried to stop it. Bella hadn't just known. She had fought. Alone, without words. She had done what I couldn't bring myself to do. Draw a line. That night, I made my choice. Mark called later, his number lighting up my screen like a flare I didn't want to follow. I let it ring. Then he texted, "We need to talk." I typed back, "There's nothing left to say. I saw everything." He didn't reply. The next day, I filed for separation. Jenna helped me find a lawyer. The process was cold and administrative. Just paperwork and signatures. It felt wrong that something so personal could be dissolved with documents. But there was relief in it, too. A kind of antiseptic closure. I moved into a small rental across town. 1 bedroom, clean walls, fewer memories, the kind of space that felt empty but promising, like a blank page. Bella adjusted quickly. She explored every corner, claimed the sunny spot near the window, and started eating again. On the 3rd night, she finally wagged her tail. Just once. But it was enough. We fell into a new routine. Simpler. Calmer. The silence here wasn't haunted. One evening, as I was reading on the couch, Bella jumped up beside me. She curled into my side and let out a long sigh, the kind dogs do when they feel safe. I looked down at her, stroked her fur, and whispered, You knew all along, didn't you? Her tail thumped softly against the cushion. There are things our hearts know before our minds can accept them. There are warnings we ignore because love, once planted, blinds us to rot. But sometimes, when we fail to listen to ourselves, someone else does. In my case, it was Bella. She watched me sleep every night, not because she was guarding me from the world, but from the lie that shared my bed. And when the moment came, she didn't bark or bite. She stood her ground,